what's going on, y'all? T-Bob here.
And Jake as well.
And you're about to watch a little OTB LSU.
We're going to give you all the latest, greatest between LSU football, baseball, women's basketball, softball, and everything in between.
Bottom line, if you want to talk Tigers, keep it locked, subscribe, like it, and we hope you enjoy it. Let's talk a little LSU football. As ESPN.com got their 12 college football writers, and you know I love a numerical, not only do I love a list, Jake, but I love a list that is created through an equation, right? I talk about the athletic quarterback tier list all the time, where they get together all the executives, coaches, everybody else, and they assign each quarterback a tier, and then they average those numbers out and see where everybody falls. Well, ESPN did something similar where they got together their 12 college football writers, and they said, hey, give me a ballot of the top 10 quarterbacks in the country. A guy who's in first got 10 points. A guy in 10th got 1 point. And then they combined all those ballots, and there it was. The equation spat out a top 10 quarterback list. And we can talk about the list itself in a bit, as it's got Caleb Williams 1, Michael Penix Jr. 2, actually above Drake May. And I think that is accurate, but we can get into that later. Bo Nix 4, Jordan Travis 5, Cam Rising, glad to see Rising this high, 6, Sam Hartman 7, J.J. McCarthy 8, Jayden Daniels 9, and Jayden Daniels from Kansas at 10. But we, are in Baton Rouge, Rennell's show, and I want to focus on Jayden Daniels. I want to pick your brain on this, Jake, because I've been thinking about this a lot lately. I don't think this is hyperbolic, though maybe it is. That's for you to decide. I'm not sure that there is a quarterback in the entire country poised to make a bigger jump than Jayden Daniels. And how I arrive here is not fully homerism, right? There is some logic here. As when you look at Jayden Daniels, I would say that kind of a defining trait of his career has been kind of untapped potential, right? Ever since that first year at Arizona State, where he threw 17 touchdowns, just 3 picks, he had the big Oregon win. Like, he looked so great, and instead of improving, he regressed as the years went on in Tempe. Now, time goes on. As you get distance from things, you learn what was actually going on. And we can see that the Herm Edwards situation at Arizona State was clearly a mess. I mean, We should have known it from the beginning, the press conference, but clearly a mess, completely dysfunctional, and you saw that. And so all of a sudden, Jayden Daniels leaves, and he joins a team late. He came before spring, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so he joined the team in January, basically has 8 months to learn a new staff, new team, new culture, as that new staff is learning the new building, new culture. So everything's new at that point. And in 8 months, what does he do? He starts to fulfill some of that potential that he flashed freshman year. But there still were things to improve on. But think about that. In 8 months, he made himself so good that he's now getting put on top 10 returning quarterbacks in the nation lists. And so if you want to start to think about it, Jake, it becomes very exciting to think, okay, so what happens if I give that same guy another year where he knows he's the starter and the most stable environment he's ever been in, the best coaching staff he's ever had, the best offensive line he's ever had, and the best weapons he has ever had? Like, I don't think it's crazy for us to expect Jayden Daniels to take a massive leap forward. At least the potential is there to take a bigger leap forward than any other quarterback in the country.
I'd agree with you. And again, this is like a list put together of 12 different people. This is not just us saying it here in Baton Rouge. And so for him to be on this list is big time, because when you look at some of the guys not on this list and guys that fell just short, Will Rogers at Mississippi State, K.J. Jefferson at Arkansas, Michael Pratt at Tulane, Spencer Rattler, Cade Klubnik at Clemson, Devin Leary
only
at Kentucky.
Got 3 points.
Yeah, Joe Milton at Tennessee. So Dylan Gabriel. I mean, so a lot of names that a lot of people, even a casual college football fan, would recognize not on this list, and Jayden is firmly on this list. And so I agree with everything you said about what this year could be. And Brian Kelly's talked about recruiting him back and him working year-round to be the best possible quarterback that he can be. Also remember, last year at the end of the season, before they knew who was declaring for the draft and who was going to put their name in it, he was a top 7 quarterback on Mel Kiper's big board.
Oh, wow.
He came in at number 7. So, he could have tested the waters, and he would have been a drafted player. Now, where he would have been drafted, you never know and how that process works out. But he was a top 7 quarterback for Mel Kiper after the season was finished. So he could have, jumped to the NFL. He had a decision to make. It wasn't just, hey, you have to come back to school. So Brian Kelly talks him back into coming to school. I found it kind of funny here in the article. It said Brian Kelly recently recruited Daniels back for one final season when he could have tested the NFL draft, putting together a year-round training program for him and helping his player from California find the elite quarterback trainer on the West Coast.
So Kelly did that for Daniels. And, we've also heard whispers from Denbrock and others. Who was it that left recently that was talking about the amount of work that Daniels has been putting in? I'm having like snatches of off-season storylines pop in my head. I just remember hearing that, like, look, you're going to be shocked at just how much work Jayden Daniels has been putting in this offseason. And the best part is that it's not like it's unclear as to what he needs to improve upon, right? Like it is very clear, right? Pushing the ball downfield, maybe a little more pocket work, like these bigger explosive chunk plays, being willing to engage in more risk, all the things that we talked about through the entire season. And it becomes terribly exciting when you think about, okay, remember the guy, because think about the guy that you saw last year in that Alabama game, beating Alabama, where that Alabama defense just could not stop him. Couldn't stop the offense, but why? Because they couldn't stop him. And I just think about him running into the end zone in overtime, looking cool as hell, basically like sucking his teeth, side-eyeing the dude, trying to keep up with him. Well, what happens if all of a sudden he is a top 10 pure passer in the entire country? Like if he is suddenly able to take advantage of Malik Neighbors and others downfield in this LSU receiving corps, well, then how do you stop him? You can't. He becomes unstoppable. And that becomes very exciting. And I think, now he has to follow through on this, right? But I think there's a lot of elements in play that could push us there to being incredibly excited about him. So I would say right now, for what it's worth, and look, a guy like J.J. McCarthy's probably in this conversation as well, because he's on this top 10 list as a kind of potential guy, right? Because what he did late in the year, the improvement you saw, like McCarthy would also feel like he is poised to take a major step forward, but I'm not sure that anybody is going to take a bigger one forward than Jayden Daniels.
No, because the rest of the people in this list, like you have Sam Hartman and Notre Dame coming over from Wake Forest. You kind of know what he is. Certainly you know what Cam Rising is. Jordan Travis being on this list. That's a very interesting name. And it's just another point another point just to set up what we're going to see in the opener there in Orlando. So it's a list that has obviously like some studs on it. It has some lists that has some studs left off of it. And I think I agree with you. Number 9, Jayden Daniels, has a lot of room to continue to push up this list and be a top 5 quarterback.
Yeah, Travis, you burned me last year, okay? You're not going to get me sleeping again. Nobody's going to take you lightly. I apologize for saying you couldn't throw last year. I'm obviously an idiot.
Let me ask you a question about some of Jayden Daniels' early season struggles. Now, he had plays early in the year, but there was a point when it felt like he was trying so hard to get Keyshawn the football.
Yeah.
Right? Almost not going through his progression, almost trying to force the issue because, look, I understand your star player is, some bad body language out there. You want to get him involved. He wasn't involved early. He would come over to the sidelines. He would talk with him, right? How much of that affected some of his growth early in the season? Because once that kind of went away, once it was like, hey, Malik Neighbors, I'm finding you. You saw that relationship really start to grow. I wonder how much of that affected his early season growth as a quarterback, because it looked like every time he come to the sidelines, it might not have affected him, at a level 10, but it was certainly something that was there.
No, I mean, it can happen, man. It can certainly happen. I know. I am not. Yeah, you might think I'm doing a bit here. I am not. But you honestly did see some of that, and the numbers support that with Derek Carr and Devontae Adams last year. Like, you should never get worse when you have an elite receiver. Now, granted, right, I don't there's arguments to be made about whether or not Keyshawn was elite anymore at that point last year. But you should never get worse, but it can be a net negative. Like, Carr way over-targeted Devontae Adams at an unsuccessful rate. Like, I want to say they had one of the lowest targets to catch ratios in the entire NFL, and it was a ton of targets. Like, at least credit Daniels for kind of relatively early starting to back off of that and being like, look, I just have to have success, even if it means my read is comfortably telling me to throw to Mason Taylor when everybody's telling me not to throw to Mason Taylor. No, so I think that was a problem early on, Jake. And I mean, I think it was just new. Everything was just new. And you saw a quarterback that continued to get better and better and better each week until you got these steps back against kind of Arkansas and A&M a bit later. But look, great bowl game, good in the SEC championship, still way more good. Again, when's the last time LSU had a top 10 returning quarterback? We did it the other day. I mean, when did we go back to? Did we go back to Rohan? Did we even grant Rohan that?
It was at least Jamarcus.
But was Jamarcus a top 10 returner?
Well, no, his junior year obviously was the year.
Yeah.
We were trying to think of someone that even had like the potential of a top 10 returning quarterback. Obviously, Flynn was a first-year starter, so he didn't have that.
Nope.
Even Matt Mock, a lot of people, had questions about Mock until he went out there and won a natty.
Burrow was never viewed as top 10 entering the year. Look, the point is, you get it. It's been a very long time. And not only do you have a top 10 returning guy, but a guy who maybe is poised to take a massive step forward. So we'll see. Our boy Patrick Vines in the Bye For YouTube chat says, if there's anyone you know who they are, it's a who has started for 4 years, like Jayden Daniels. He struggled with A&M, struggled with Arkansas, he struggled all year. He had a great year. I mean to say, though, that his struggles were established and were the same. Okay, and then he goes on to say, look, his ceiling has been hit. We all know the limitations. They did not change. Off the bat, I'll say this. Look, I understand where you're coming from, certainly, because normally, Jake, a guy who has started that long is a known quantity.
Right.
Unfortunately, you are, either accidentally ignoring or willfully ignoring the change in setting. And the impact that can have. And if you're accusing me of just trying to argue to support my argument, sure, whatever, or if you think that I'm just saying, well, the change in setting had massive, how about we just go to numbers, right? Like I didn't, I can't make up numbers, right? So you tell me his ceiling has been hit, right? Except in 2021, his third year starting, when he should have been a known quantity, right? In 2021 at Arizona State, he threw for 2,300 yards, 10 touchdowns, 10 picks. And then in 2022, he throws for 3,000 yards, 17 touchdowns, 3 picks. So what are we talking about? We are talking about a huge, demonstrable, numerical step forward. So you can tell me that he's a known quantity and that he is who he is, but he played better than who he was. And again, the theory here is that with more time on task, same coordinator, same staff, same players, knowing you're the guy throughout the entirety of the offseason, knowing Baton Rouge, knowing the culture, the school, everything else, that you could maybe expect another demonstrable, numerical step forward. So I get what you're getting at with Jayden Daniels is already a known quantity because he started for 4 years, but not all roads are created equally, right? And there are very clearly elements in Jayden's journey that would point to growth still to be had. He also, that was just the passing numbers. He also rushed for 100 more yards and 5 more touchdowns. The bottom line is that Jayden Daniels was a significantly better player last year than he was the year before. And I think there's potential. And yes, look, when he was bad, it was in the ways that he has struggled with in his career. But those are the things that you continue to work on. And now he's in a better environment than he ever has been before to try to fix those things. So that's how I feel comfortable saying that a guy who's going to be now a 5th-year starter can still take a big step in improvement-wise.
Yeah, and you saw him get better within the year as well. And so, you saw growth throughout the year. And also, you have a backup quarterback at LSU that is very capable. So I don't think we're arguing Jayden Daniels just to make you feel better about the LSU quarterback situation. Yeah. You have somebody in Garrett Nussmeier that could be the starter at a lot of different places, all right? And we'll see what his role is for LSU, but this is somebody that you saw continue to grow last year, talking about Jayden Daniels. And the things that he was bad at early in the year, I do think he improved on. Were there some games where you're like, man, that feels like the old Jayden? That feels like the guy we saw earlier in the year? There was. But there was also a guy continuing to get better and better. I mean, that stretch that he had of the Ole Miss Alabama game, I mean, that was about as good of a quarterback that you had in any like 2-3 week stretch that we see.
Agreed.
Like across the country. And then you finish it out with a strong bowl game as well. So we saw him at an absolute high, and I think that high can get even higher. And yeah, there were some struggles, against A&M and against Arkansas. That was some team struggles as well, offensively, certainly. So yeah, I still think there's room for growth. And look, it's a fair point. I understand somebody that started that many games, but you have to, like T-Wop said, you have a new coaching staff,
Yep.
You have a new philosophy, you have a new system, you have players around you that are Sunday players. You didn't always have that at Arizona State. You did your freshman year. You did in your sophomore and junior year. Now you have the same situation here yet again at LSU.
I agree. And, that Florida, Ole Miss, Alabama,
Florida,
three-game
I couldn't think what that
sequence.
third game
Yeah,
was.
that's what made me look it up as well. I knew there was a third one in there. That is what you certainly want to highlight and be like, more of this. This is what we want more of. Emil in the chat saying that he can't believe that they would be convincing Garrett Nussmeier to basically sit this entire year, saying he fully expects maybe not like a 50-50 two-quarterback system, but some sort of two-quarterback system, and for Nussmeier to get SEC play. Maybe in games which you're blowing him out, some reps around the edges. I don't know, man. And this is not with any inside info or anything. Like Brian Kelly has in the past been more than willing to do so. So maybe he will. I don't know. I don't see it. I'm a firm opponent of two quarterback systems. I like a guy to know that he's the guy. I like a guy to have a little rope to play with. I like having a guy that the entire team can look to and be like, okay, this is the guy. And it would be a bit odd if, when you have a top 10 returning quarterback for the first time in, 20 years, that you would employ a two quarterback system.
I obviously, I see what a lot of people are thinking because of the bowl game. We weren't expecting that. At least I wasn't. I don't know if you were, T, but
no, yeah.
As much of a rotation as they had, and it worked, obviously. I mean, you crushed Purdue. Purdue never had a chance
we
in
know
that
we
game.
know the elements. Purdue lost their coach,
Right.
it was never happening for Purdue.
So will you see that? No, I would be shocked if you saw something like that. But it's a fair question to ask, okay, how do you keep Garrett Nussmeier happy?
Yeah.
Because he has come in and played well at times. That's the challenge of almost every elite football program right now. How do you keep the really good, highly recruited backup quarterback happy long enough for him to become your starter?
It's impossible.
That is the challenge across the board. That's why we saw, so many different quarterbacks dive into the portal that were kind of those fringe starters from a year ago. And that's why they're in a new spot. That is the biggest challenge. Well, not the biggest. There's so many challenges for these coaches. All these coaches have gray hair now. But you have to find a way. If you have a backup quarterback that has some value, you are 3 steps ahead of everyone else.
Yeah. No, I just, like you said, how do you keep? Again, I would be very surprised if they promised Nuss, hey, we'll run a 2-quarterback system, and that's why he's staying, right? I think you likely told him, hey, look, you will be the guy next year, and obviously this year, if anybody goes down, it's you. And injuries are reality of football, and they happen all the time. And so you are quite literally always only one play away. So I guess I don't know if I fully buy that he had to have the promise of a 2-quarterback system to stick around. But again, these are things that only time will tell as we go on. Wow, Jake, what incredible takes.
Those guys, they're just the best.
I think so. And if you think so, again, hit the like button, subscribe, ring the bell so you get notifications when we post every single day here on OTB LSU.